Okay, let's unpack this. It is Friday, January 16th, 2026. And I want to start by just checking in on a very specific, kind of unsettling feeling. A feeling I think a lot of us have been carrying around for a while now. It's this subtle sense that, okay, the crisis years are technically over, right?
Right.
The supply chains are moving, stores are generally stocked, the panic headlines have faded away. But if you're really honest with yourself, does it feel like we went back to normal? Or does it feel like we landed somewhere else entirely?
That is precisely the question we're tackling today. And if you're feeling that disconnect, that sense that the world is, functioning but somehow feels different in its bones, you're not imagining it. You're detecting a signal.
Exactly. We're diving into a concept called GOA-9, social phase transition. And honestly, when I first read through this stack of notes, I had a bit of an aha moment. It put a name to that weird vibe I've been feeling when I go to the grocery store or, I don't know, try to buy a car. But before we get too deep, we need to set the ground rules. Right.
We do, and this is critical. The mission of this deep dive is not to make a prediction. We aren't here to tell you what will happen in 2027 or 2030. This is an observation of a baseline that has already shifted. We're looking at the present, not the future.
So we're essentially playing catch up with reality.
In a way, yes. The core concept here is phase transition. Now, in physics, a phase transition is when a substance changes state like water turning to ice. When water freezes, the molecules are the same, but the rules of engagement, they change completely. You can swim in water, you have to walk on ice.
Right. Same stuff, different rules.
Exactly. And GOA-9 defines this social phase transition very specifically. It is not a crash.
Okay, so not a dramatic collapse where the buildings fall down and the banks close.
Not at all. It's a phenomenon where the premises supporting our lives, our judgments, our expectations, the logic we use to navigate the day, they were quietly switched out when we weren't looking.
That's a spooky thought. It's like someone came in and updated the operating system of the world while we were sleeping. And we woke up trying to use the old interface, but nothing clicks the same way.
That is a perfect analogy. The source material puts it this way. Even if prices return to normal, and even if supply recovers, human behavior and the way we use the world do not revert to the previous specifications. The transition is irreversible.
So let's talk about what this actually feels like, because I think we're conditioned to look for big, loud events. We look for stock market crashes or political revolutions to tell us things have changed. But this is quieter.
Much quieter, and that's why it's only recognized after it happens. I mean, think about the last few years. We spent so much time waiting for things to go back. We kept saying once the supply chain fixes itself or once inflation stabilizes. Well, looking around in 2026, many of those metrics have stabilized, at least on paper. But let me ask you, are you behaving the way you did in 2019?
Definitely not. I mean, just the way I shop or even how I plan vacations. I used to expect everything to be instant, available, and cheap. Now, I just assume there's going to be friction. I assume a wait time.
Exactly. The symptoms of social phase transition aren't things breaking. They are things simply not returning. It's the absence of a revert. The operating system of society changed versions. The old version, where we expected constant, rapid, cheap upgrades to everything, it's gone. And it didn't ask for permission to leave.
You know, it's funny you mention upgrades because the sources point to a really specific industry as the canary in the coal mine for this whole theory, semiconductors.
Yes. This is where it gets fascinating. We usually talk about semiconductors as, a dry tech topic or a geopolitical chess piece. But GOA-9 identifies the semiconductor industry as the first model, the verification machine that proved the phase transition had occurred.
Right, and it wasn't just about we can't get enough chips for cars, was it? It went deeper into the physics of it.
Much deeper. The narrative we were told initially was just shortage. We thought, oh, factories are closed, supply chains are snagged, it'll pass. But what the semiconductor crisis actually revealed were hard physical constraints. We ran into walls regarding manufacturing capacity, electricity usage, raw materials, and crucially, investment recovery periods.
That term investment recovery period keeps popping up in the notes. Why is that the linchpin here?
Because it dictated the speed of our lives for 30 years. We lived under Moore's law, chips got faster and cheaper every 18 months. That created an economic model where new always equaled better and cheap. But as we hit physical limits, making chips better started getting exponentially more expensive. The investment required to build a new fab is now so astronomically high that companies need longer, much longer, to make their money back.
So the cycle had to slow down. They couldn't afford to make the old stuff obsolete as fast as they used to.
Precisely. And this leads to the most important concept in the semiconductor model, generation reversal.
I love this term, generation reversal. It sounds like a sci-fi plot, but it's actually about our phones and laptops. Break that down for us.
Okay, think about the old premise. Let's say circa 2015. The standard was the newest generation of technology is always the best, and you should upgrade as soon as possible. If you had a 2-year-old phone, you were behind. You were suffering.
Oh, yeah. I remember lining up for phones. It was a status symbol, but also the old phones genuinely got sluggish really fast.
Right. But what happened when the physical constraints hit? We saw a shift. Suddenly, the new reality became old tech is good enough. We saw the normalization of extending the life of products. We saw a massive boom in the secondhand market, not because people were necessarily poor, but because the new wasn't offering enough value to justify the cost and difficulty.
That is so true. I mean, look at us now. Buying a certified pre-owned device is totally standard. It's almost smart.
Yeah.
Like you're savvy if you do that. It's no longer a mark of not being able to afford the new one. It's a mark of realizing the new one isn't worth it.
That is the phase transition. The behavior changed because the underlying value proposition broke. And here's the kicker. Even when chips became available again, did society rush back to upgrading every 12 months?
No. We stuck with a new habit. The sales numbers show that clearly.
Exactly. The specifications of life had changed. The transition wasn't about a lack of chips. It was a switch in the premise of value. We moved from newest is essential to functionality is sufficient. And that shift, it's irreversible. You can't unlearn that efficiency.
So we've got this model established with tech, but the sources say this isn't just about gadgets. It's spreading. It's what they call, wait for it, isomorphic constraints, which is a fancy way of saying the same shape, right?
You got it. The idea is that this phase transition propagates. It spreads to any field that shares the same conditions as the semiconductor industry. And the source lists 3 specific conditions. 1, strong physical constraints. 2, slow recovery times. And 3, a direct connection to daily life.
Okay, so where else are we seeing this?
Look at energy, look at logistics, look at labor, look at finance. In all these sectors, we see the same pattern. Even if institutions fix the supply, say they get more drivers or build more power plants, people's expectations have already effectively given up on the old standard.
Giving up sounds a little depressing, doesn't it? Sounds like we lost.
I would reframe that. It's not giving up in a defeatist way, it's an adaptation. It's what the source calls resigned adaptation. We stop fighting for the old luxury of instant, cheap, endless abundance, and we settle into a rhythm that actually works within the constraints.
That makes sense. It's like if you're stuck in traffic every day for a year, eventually you stop getting mad and screaming at the windshield. You just start listening to audiobooks. You adapt.
Perfectly put. You change your internal state because you can't change the external one. But here is where it gets complex socially. This adaptation doesn't happen evenly for everyone. And this leads to perhaps the most significant insight in the report, the emergence of a dual society.
2 societies.
Right.
Haves and have-nots.
It's more subtle than that. It's about operating systems. Imagine you have a computer trying to run 2 different versions of Windows at the same time. The source describes a high-end OS and a local life OS.
Break those down for us. Who's running which OS?
The high-end OS belongs to the major metropolitan hubs, the large global corporations, the advanced sectors. It's expensive, it's connected, it's fast. It still operates on the logic of growth and speed.
Okay, that's the gleaming skyscrapers, the international flights, the stock market tickers.
Right, but then you have the local life OS. This is the regions, the small businesses, the daily routines of millions of people. The system is slower, it relies on older technology, it's somewhat disconnected from that high-speed global flow. And the key insight here is that these 2 systems exist side by side, but they have weak compatibility.
Weak compatibility. So the things happening in the high-end OS, the stock prices, the tech breakthroughs, don't really talk to the local life OS anymore.
Exactly. They don't sync. And this explains so much of the political tension we see globally. The source makes a provocative point here. Politics isn't immobile. Politicians are moving, they are passing laws. But politics has become ineffective.
Oof, ineffective. Why?
Because the policies are being issued based on the old operating system. They're pulling levers that assume the world works the way it did in 2019, or they are pulling levers that only control the high-end OS. But the phase of daily life, the local life OS, has already moved on. The levers are moving, but they aren't connected to the gears anymore.
That explains that feeling of, well, almost gaslighting, right? You hear these grand announcements about economic recovery or new initiatives, but in your actual neighborhood, the restaurant closes at 8 p.m. now instead of 11, and nobody expects next-day delivery anymore.
Yes. The narrative layer is moving at one speed, but the reality layer has settled into a slower, more constrained gear. And the friction between those two, that's the defining feature of our time. It's not a conflict of ideologies as much as it is a conflict of operating systems.
I want to zoom out a bit and look at the map, because this isn't hitting everyone the same way, right? The sources give us some really interesting snapshots of different regions, and I was surprised to see who was winning at this, or at least who was furthest ahead.
Winning might be the wrong word, but adapting. Definitely Japan.
Japan. Usually we hear about Japan struggling with stagnation.
But look at it through the lens of GOA-9. Japan is furthest ahead in this adaptation. They've been dealing with demographic shrinkage and economic stagnation for decades. They have already accepted a certain level of price and quality drop. The second-hand route isn't just an alternative there. In many ways, it has become the standard, regular route.
So they were practicing for this phase transition before the rest of us even knew it was coming. They built a society that functions without the expectation of constant explosive growth.
In a sense, yes. Their local life OS is very robust because it stopped expecting the high-end miracle growth a long time ago. They have settled into that resigned adaptation. They found a way to be comfortable within the constraints.
Interesting. And then you have the U.S.
The U.S. is a different beast. The source notes that the U.S. has a very strong state OS. They are trying to actively design the transition. You see massive investments in industrial policy, trying to force the gears to turn.
But there's a risk there, isn't there?
Huge risk. The risk is that the investment timeline splits. You get a hyper-accelerated urban tech sector, the high-end OS, on steroids, while the rural and local areas drift further away into that disconnected local OS. It creates a compatibility error between the two halves of the country.
It's like the country's stretching and the elastic band in the middle is getting really thin. What about Europe?
Europe is described as having thick regulations and a focus on consensus. This makes them slower to adapt. They are trying to hold on to the social contract, the agreement that the state looks after everyone, but the physical constraints on energy and security are putting immense tension on that membrane. The risk there isn't just a split, it's a hardening. The system freezes up because it can't decide which premise to abandon.
It really paints a picture of a world that is grappling with the same problem, but solving it in totally different ways. But the common thread is this resigned adaptation.
Yes. And I want to be clear about that term again. Resigned sounds negative, like giving up hope. But in this context, it's closer to acceptance or maturity. It's the moment you stop banging your head against a locked door and look for a window instead. It's a quiet acceptance that the old rules simply don't apply, so we stop wasting energy pretending they do.
So if we accept that we aren't waiting for a recovery, but we are living in the next state, what does that mean for us, for the listener driving to work right now?
This is the crucial shift in mindset. We need to stop asking, when will we recover? That is the wrong question. It implies we can go back in time.
Right. No time machines allowed.
The real question, the one GOA-9 pushes us toward, is how do we design life, education, and civic systems after the transition?
That's a big pivot. It's not about fixing the cracks. It's about building furniture that fits in the new room.
Exactly. Think about education. If the premise of constant upward mobility through consumption is gone, what are we teaching for? Are we teaching skills for the high-end OS that only a few will access? Or should we be teaching resilience, repair, and community maintenance for the local life OS?
Or citizen OS, as the notes call it, preparedness.
Yes. Preparedness not for the apocalypse. This isn't about bunkers and canned beans, but for the ongoing reality. If supply chains are slower, how does your community handle that? If the newest tech isn't the answer, how do you maintain the old tech? These are the design challenges of the post-transition world.
It's almost like we need to become curators of our own lives. We can't just rely on the automatic update anymore. We have to manually patch things.
That is a beautiful way to put it. The automatic update of progress has stalled. Now progress is manual, it's local, and it requires intention.
You know, this whole deep dive has been strangely comforting. I mean, acknowledging that things are different takes the pressure off, doesn't it? The pressure to pretend everything is fine.
It validates the reality of your experience. When you stop waiting for the past to return, you can finally start inhabiting the present. And there is a lot of opportunity in this new phase. When you aren't obsessed with the new, you can find incredible value in the durable, the connected.
Deep, durable, connected. I like that better than new, fast, disposable.
It's a trade-off. We lost the speed, but we might gain some stability if we design for it. We trade efficiency for resilience.
I want to throw one more layer onto this before we wrap up. The sources mention the psychological toll of this dual society. It's not just economic, it's the feeling of isolation, right? If you're in the local OS and you see the high-end OS zooming by, it feels personal.
It does. And that's why the Citizen OS concept is so vital. It bridges the gap. It suggests that dignity and progress don't have to come from the high-end system. You can build a meaningful, progressive life within the local OS if you change the metric of success. If success isn't how much new stuff did I buy, but how well does my community function, then the local OS actually has the advantage.
That's empowering. It puts the control back in our hands, rather than waiting for some policy in a capital city to fix everything.
Exactly. It turns resigned adaptation into active adaptation. You aren't just enduring the phase transition, you are designing for it.
So here is where we leave you today. We've unpacked the quiet shift. We've looked at the semiconductor model, the dual society, and this idea of resigned adaptation. We've traveled from the microchip factories to the grocery store aisle.
And remember, this wasn't a forecast. We didn't tell you what's coming next year. We just held up a mirror to what has already happened. We are describing the ice you are already standing on.
Exactly. So here is my final provocation for you to mull over this weekend. If the latest and greatest is no longer the default goal for society, if the arrow of progress isn't just pointing up and to the right on a sales chart anymore, what does progress look like for you personally in this new phase?
Is it durability? Is it autonomy? Is it local connection?
Think about that. Observe your own life next week. Look for the places where you've already shifted your baseline without realizing it. You might be surprised at how much you've already adapted.
The OS is already updated. Now it's just time to learn how to use it.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.